How are you feeling today?
I'm okay, Tom. I feel relaxed a lot and I feel excited for this podcast. And I also feel even more reinvigorated through my own ideas on how to develop my own private practice since we had a brief chat
Yeah.
right before this
It wasn't as
podcast.
brief.
Well, yeah, it wasn't as brief. Yeah. And it felt good and nice because sometimes you need that support from others, and it doesn't need to be just, oh, I need your support, but it could be two people, two or more people discussing something together, and when you leave from that meet, you feel emboldened to try something, motivated. Perhaps you would have shared the load a little bit. So that's how I am feeling in this moment.
Well, I'm quite excited today because, as I told you, we're trying a new setup today, and I'm quite pleased how this turned out. So obviously the listeners can't see, but the people who are viewing this on YouTube and other socials can see the ambience. So any feedback is also welcome on this. So
Yes. No, I told you already. I mean, I really like the vibe and the stone
nice,
and then the lights. Well done, well done.
nice. Wayne, you just recently graduated as a Gestalt psychotherapist. How was that experience through moving through the course and now spreading your wings and your own practice?
Yes, later this year it's going to be already 2 years that I graduated. Um, Sometimes I miss the studying and the workshops and the seminars because the school of psychotherapy that I studied, Gestalt psychotherapy, is very experiential. So you learn a lot by seeing, listening, and also trying, because part of the studies were that we have to be a psychotherapist with a fellow student colleague in front of the class. So that's one part of it. The other part is that it feels that I am doing and working what I am passionate about in my life. So if we take that quote, do something that you love and you only need to work a day in your life. Well, it's still work,
Yeah.
but it's not something that I feel that I'm doing just for the money or that I just, okay, I enjoy it a bit. It's one of my passions to be present with someone and in some way, shape, or form, I may help, guide, support, whatever word you want to take, to know a bit more themselves, be a bit more self aware, process certain thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, worries in a slightly different way that perhaps can be a fresh way how they can see life or see a situation. So that feels good. And in my private practice, so I do work full time with a local agency where we give psychotherapeutic support to families with a lot of difficulties. But in my own private practice, I also enjoy it because now I am finally doing what I've been studying for the past 10 years. Okay, so when I graduated, it was a 10-year journey. 3 years bachelor, 2 years break to see what I want to do, and then 4 or 5 years of masters.
that wasn't the place where you started. You started in a different career path, right?
Yes, I had started in IT, and I worked in IT for about 8 years, from around 1920 till till like 27, I think, something like that. And I did it at the time, so I chose IT when I was, I think, 18, because this can be an avenue of work where I can do this. So at that time, either I did not have enough guidance, external guidance, to help me do or study something which is related to my wishes, passions, and skills. Or possibly I also did not have my own inner guidance at the time. It was not yet developed enough for me to say, wait, is this something that I want to do for the rest of my life or a big chunk of my life? Because you can still change. But I wasn't ready at the time. But then life always shows you where you may need to go for your own well-being, peace of mind, or happiness. And for me, it was when I was working in IT, I had an amazing salary, amazing benefits. I was working in gaming, and I was enjoying sort of the time with my colleagues. But when I was solving problems and technical issues, it was more rewarding for me the 2 to 5 minutes I was talking to the person, or maybe 10 minutes, and the satisfaction that I supported or I helped you in some way, rather than the satisfaction of solving that technical issue.
Okay.
And that was a very big hint.
How did you realize this? It was a profound moment, I would say. How did you?
I can't pinpoint it to one single moment. It was a mix and a progression of several moments. First of all, that I was not feeling well at work because I was on call for a long time, and if a technical issue happens at 5 or 6, you have to stay there until you solve it. So there were these hints. My body was already telling me that this is not perhaps good for you, or how you are working, or how you are employing your coping skills at work. Something is not right. I had a lot of anxiety, unprocessed emotions, unprocessed stuff, which were related due to the stress and long hours of work I used to work. So that was the first hint. Then, what I just mentioned. Another hint was that at the time I had come out of a very difficult breakup, and for the first time in my life I was like, listen, meditation and speaking to friends is not enough. I need to seek some professional support. I had even started to take, I took it briefly, only some anxiety medication. It was that bad. I had went to a professional. But then I said, listen, I need to find a professional. And I asked around, and there was this therapist, and I started going, and I immediately liked it. I didn't just like the concept of therapy of me as a client and how I was already benefiting as a client, since I was processing all these things and finding new coping strategies, but also as a potential psychotherapist in the other chair.
So you sort of had a eureka moment there.
Yes, it felt good. And then we just mentioned it earlier, life shows you the way if you are willing to see or listen to it. And nowadays we get caught too much in the rat race of life to see these signs or these moments where life tells you, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you consider this? And I was talking to a friend, and long story short, he told me, I thought that I needed some A levels, which I didn't have, to study the Bachelor's of Psychology at university. And he told me, no, man, you just need to apply as a mature student and do one basic entrance exam, which was a few topics of biology. And the rest is history.
So that kickstarted your journey.
Yes.
And how is it now that after the 10-year journey? So what are the lessons that you've learned? So if you can picture yourself 10 years ago and now 10 years later, what were the key lessons that you've learned about yourself?
Well, a lot happened in the last 10 years, so I will try to encapsulate. The first one is, we are all a work in progress, which means that whatever change you are implementing, you are always in some way, shape or form growing. Whatever problems you have right now, even if you are at a very difficult and dark moment, this moment is still a potential moment for growth, an opportunity for growth. Perhaps you can't take that opportunity right now. You're too much in the grip of the darkness at the moment, or the dark moment. But eventually, that experience may help you progress to something else or a new moment. And when you look back, you may say, okay, I feel a bit, for example, depressed right now, or I feel a bit anxious, but I'm not as I was a year ago, 6 months ago, 10 years ago. So we are all a work in progress. And maybe the second one, I can maybe describe this whole process of psychology and psychotherapy is that, like the Serenity Prayer, it supported me to have the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, have the courage to change the things I can, and have the wisdom to know the difference.
Okay.
So if we break it down, accept the things I cannot change. Now I'm 37, so I can't change to be taller, for example, to put a very simple example. So that part of growth I cannot change. But if there is something in my life which is happening, and maybe a conflict is happening very often with a colleague or a partner or a family, maybe I'm feeling disheartened when I'm trying something, or I'm getting frustrated with something else. These are all feedback mechanisms, feedback messages from life. So I can't be taller, but if how I am communicating with a colleague or with my partner is creating more arguments, then I can have the courage to try and change them. To maybe bring it together, to have the wisdom to know the differences, that I cannot accept, let me rephrase, if there is an issue with my partner, I can communicate my needs and ask them, listen, this is what I need. But I cannot expect them to change
Okay.
or try to change them. I can ask them, listen, it can be an expectation in the relationship that what's important for you is that you always grow as a couple. But I can't expect them to change completely from one day to the next. So I have to accept that they cannot change immediately from one day to the next. But I can accept that, okay, I accept that you will work on this as a colleague, as my partner, whatever. And then I have to have the courage to try and see how I can change or they can change. To have the wisdom to know the differences also. That certain things can change in a person and others may not. And this is something I see a lot in my clients and in life. We expect others to change. We cannot change others. The only person that can change is yourself. So, to connect it with a work in progress and acceptance, change, and wisdom is that during this journey of psychology and psychotherapy, you become wiser on the things that you cannot change and the things that you can. And to close on this, in a way, sometimes you can't change how you feel in that moment. You will be sad. You will be unhappy at a certain point in your life. You will be disappointed by others. And in psychotherapy, we do it a lot. You can learn to stay with it a little bit without pushing it away. Because what you resist persists. And then you can stay a bit with it to process it, and maybe then you speak to a loved one or someone you trust. Or if it's something which you don't know how to go about it, you can go to someone professional, to a psychotherapist or a counselor or psychologist. So yeah, and then you can realize, but wait, no more excuses. This is something that I have to change, or my health will become worse, or I will lose this beautiful person in my life, someone that loves me or takes care of me, or I need to let go of this toxic person. So it's about fine-tuning when to do what. A toolbox. So, you know, these big toolboxes. So before I started the 10-year psychotherapy, I had a small box. Now I have a big box. And then when an issue comes up, I just open the toolbox and I use the right tool. Not necessarily immediately, perhaps, as well. Because I'm human, I have my difficult moments, I have my down moments, but it's not that bad in a way that becomes dysfunctional in my life, that it impedes me from living my life to the full or as best as I can.
And obviously, when you can draw many experiences from your meditation classes and from your therapy and from your academic record as well, in practice, for everyone else, how in your experience, how can one become in tune with their own thoughts and emotions and become present and aware practically?
Very good question. So basically, if we start on an individual level, it's to have an open mind, which is, if I want to be present and aware, and what was the other? I want to be present and aware, and what else? in practice, like
in touch with your emotions.
in touch with your emotions. So what you can do is either you can, simplest way, you can buy a book or find a good source of information,
Okay.
and then you try and follow it, So it gives you new ideas which you did not have, and you try them out and you experiment. Okay? And I say experiment is that if it doesn't succeed, it doesn't mean that that method is wrong, and definitely there is nothing wrong with you either. It's just that it's not the right method for you. In fact, I always say it. It's not about finding the right method or the right idea or the right routine or the right communication skill, the right way for you. And then you do a book, but then you realize it's not enough for you. Then the other step perhaps would be to speak, to go to a class, or to speak up to a professional. If I take the psychotherapy stance, because I can speak from my experience as a psychotherapist in these last 4 years, because I had already started working before I graduated. It's important. It's an important part of the masters. So in these past few years, when you go for psychotherapy, in my personal professional opinion, psychotherapy is change or the potential for change.
Okay.
So if you're going to psychotherapy with the expectation that you don't need to change anything about yourself or around you, I would maybe suggest either you need to seek something else, or please find a way that you can find some humility in yourself, or courage, or determination to consider, what can I do differently? You don't need to change your identity or change yourself completely. It doesn't work that way. You can change the way what you do when you wake up. How to do your tea and coffee. And so you mentioned emotions, present and aware. So in psychotherapy supports someone to process emotions. So just by talking about it, sometimes
it's enough to
it's
release
enough.
that negative
So
energy.
you're sharing the load, and while you're sharing the emotions, sometimes you start understanding something by yourself already. Then the psychotherapist supports you to, or challenges you with a simple question. Okay, so you were sad and you were crying, and the narrative, the story was, why am I crying again? I'm always crying, I'm always failing, full stop. Have you considered speaking to yourself in another way? That is a very simple question, but it's supporting or challenging the person to find another way. And that's what change is in therapy. You are just considering, trying, or implementing something which before wasn't there. It wasn't in your toolbox. So that's just talking or a simple question. Processing can happen in the body as well. So I can ask the client, where are you feeling the anxiety? In my chest. And by creating more awareness of what's going on in the body, we can stay a bit more with it inside of us.
You make it physical.
You make it more
tangible.
real. Exactly, you make it more tangible. So where is it? Where is your anxiety? In my chest. How big is it? My whole chest. Does it have a form? Yes, it's like a ball and it has some spikes. And with this questioning, and then stay with it. Gestalt psychotherapy is, I'm really passionate about it. Even other psychologists or counselors, they use different methods. It's very creative. So sometimes we create dialogue with our body and with our anxiety. What is the anxiety trying to tell you? You know, you can even become the anxiety. So I am the anxiety, I am in Wayne's chest, and I'm telling him, listen, something is not right when you are going to speak in public. I'm going into a bit of detail because I would like to share what happens in psychotherapy since we have the opportunity.
For sure.
Then the therapist asks them, okay, so, and then you ask the person, what can support you to feel good or prepared or less anxious before you go to speak in public? And then the client, the person, comes up with some ideas that work for them.
Yeah.
Psychotherapy is not about telling the client what to do. Many people think it's this way. It's a very big misconception. And as therapists, we avoid as much as possible to give any kind of advice. Why? Because the advice I give you is mine, not yours. It's built completely on my experience, not on yours. How can I give you a method which is just mine without you exploring what can work for you? You can explore it in a week or two, in a few weeks, but isn't it better if you start with your own potential method that works for you?
There's power in that.
Yes. Yes, it's very powerful. So psychotherapists are, through questions and explorations, you can find a new way, a fresh way, a better way. And then the client, the person says, yes, before I start speaking in public, maybe I can take someone with me. I can rehearse. And then you start implementing these things. You are refining your tools in your toolbox for when you go and speak in public. You are refining your tools in your toolbox when anxiety comes up. It could be breathing in your chest. While breathing, you breathe inside your chest. It's like almost visualizing your breath going in your chest. It could be grounding yourself. So these are just a couple of ways how we can process emotions and things. And if we go to how to be present and aware, it can also be with psychotherapy, and because psychotherapy also supports you to adopt new coping skills, that if a difficult thought comes in your mind, I'm a failure, I can't make it, or dana, you become immediately more aware of them. You know? To give a clear example, we have a lot of noise in our brain, and it's like a background TV which is on. So if you are in a room and the TV is on and you're doing something else, you realize that the TV is on either when you stop, this is bothering me, or when you switch it off. When you switch it off, the immediate silence afterwards helps you realize how loud the TV was, perhaps. And this is the same thing. When you are exploring these things with a professional, with a psychotherapist, you are fine-tuning yourself to be aware of these incoming thoughts. So that's the general. Then you can also practice. So if you take a bit more of a mindful approach through mindfulness, you can practice. Are you aware when you eat? Oh yes, of course, I'm aware when I eat. Oh yes. Yes, but are you aware of the flavors? Are you aware of each and every bite you are taking? Are you aware of the smell, of the freshness, of the warmth of the food, of the texture of the food? No, people usually answer, no, I sometimes I start
Functioning, you
eating.
just eat and that's it.
I just eat on my desk or wherever, and I don't even know what I ate almost.
Yeah.
So, a very simple way is to be more mindful of your everyday actions without getting lost in background thinking. You know, people talk about we're addicted to drinking, addicted to smoking. In my personal opinion, we are addicted to thinking, but it is so normal, so widespread, that we feel that it's something normal.
In what sense? Addicted to thinking?
That if I ask you or anyone else, can you stop thinking for 5 minutes completely? Just 5 minutes, not 24 hours, 5 minutes.
And how would that be?
And I'm saying not that thoughts don't come in, but that you are not affected by your thoughts. To put it a bit simpler, in our mind we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
So there's this background voice always commenting, judging, labeling. If I tell you, can you silence that voice for 5 minutes? And if that voice comes in, you just see it for what it is. It's just a thought which came in, but it's not you. It's something that came into in your field of awareness. How can I put it even a bit more simpler? Okay, so to be present and aware, if you're washing your car, but throughout the whole time you're washing your car, or washing the dishes, or having a shower, you're worrying or thinking, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do that.
It's automatic.
Yeah. Well, it's automatic. We are on autopilot.
Yeah, when you're driving.
The constant thinking is on autopilot. But were you really present with the car while you were washing it? Were you really present with the dishes while you were washing them? Were you really present with your, with your dog while while he or she's with you?
Why do you feel it's important to be present while washing the dishes and washing the car?
Yes.
The dog, obviously, there's an emotional connection to that. But
Yes, very good question. Because when we are slowing down, this constant thinking, this constant voice, labeling or judging or commenting about every single thing in your life, when you are slowing that process down, you are more in the moment, which means you are truly living in the moment. And you will make better decisions because you will not immediately label a situation as right or wrong, especially wrong. You will not immediately judge yourself when you fail. You will not immediately judge someone else just because they made a simple mistake. You will be able to know which tool to use from your toolbox. Because if you're lost in your worries and overthinking, you can't really make an informed, grounded, present choice. You see where I'm getting at?
Yeah. So it's the power of looking at the bigger picture in some situations as well.
Yes, it's like, can you really make a good decision while you're angry? So my question is, can you really truly live fully if you are constantly bombarded by the voice, the commenting voice in your mind?
It's an interesting concept. Whether you can make a good decision if you're angry. So let's explore this for a moment.
Sure. Sure.
So imagine yourself so anger stems from somewhere.
Yeah.
You're angry for a reason. Perhaps you had been piling up certain emotions, certain thoughts, and perhaps you are reasoning things out, and then one thing sparked that anger and you took that decision. So anger in that situation was the fuel or the motivation for you to get the job done in that regard.
Yeah.
But I find, even myself, and when I talk to people, is that regardless whether you feel proud of yourself for taking that decision, because it might be that I had to take the decision to break up with this person. It can be as simple as that.
Yes.
So this is the limit. That person hit the limit, and you
Yes.
decide to, through anger, you decide to break up. So it can be in
No,
that
it
situation.
can be.
But I still find that people, and myself, you regret that you took the decision through anger. Even if
Yeah.
it's a fuel, it's a form of regret, because you don't feel, perhaps, and I'm realizing just now, you might not feel as aware and conscious of in that moment. You're so driven by emotion
Yes.
that you're not 100% conscious.
Yes.
It feels like you didn't take the decision in full control, if that makes sense.
Wow, excellent. It's an excellent example. To go back to your question,
Mhm.
to connect to it with being present and aware more in your life, all the spiritual teachers, all the sages, whether it's Jesus, Buddha, or whatever, they all mentioned mentioned silence, quiet, silence. Find that space inside you. Find that quiet moment. Don't let the worries overtake you. And when you are practicing meditation or mindfulness or with psychotherapy, you are becoming more conscious of all your emotions, including your anger. In fact, let me rephrase my previous statement. Is there a difference between making a decision when you're angry and making a decision while you're consciously angry? Because I can speak to you, Daniel, while I'm consciously angry. And being consciously angry means that I am aware of my anger. And I am controlling it, not the anger is controlling me.
So is the sort of, to make it simple as well, as the difference between rage and anger.
Yeah.
Rage is uncontrolled.
Yes,
Uncontrolled anger. Where anger is it's purposeful.
Yes, but I can be angry and I can tell you, oh, you've been... And I'm not aware, I'm not rageful. But if I tell you, listen, right now, I'm really angry. I'm really effing angry. So I'm not just conscious of my anger, I'm also conscious of how I'm communicating my anger. I'm more present with you and with my anger, thanks to meditation, mindfulness, and psychotherapy. And I'm going to communicate with you consciously angry, because this can no longer continue. Okay? We've been through this, and to use your example of a breakup, and this can no longer continue. Are you seeing the difference, Daniel, that if I can consciously communicate my anger, I may not have the regret, or as much as of a regret, where you broke up when anger took over, controlled you rather than you control it.
You have to be very aware of what you are accepting and what things that you don't want to accept, and the things that you accept as well. So that's a very clear boundary there.
Yes, and if I may touch on boundaries in a moment, why is it important to be present and aware? And there's a quote which says, "The mind is an excellent servant, but a terrible master. Let me repeat it. The mind, the uncontrolled mind, the mind by itself can be an excellent servant, but it's a terrible master, because if it's uncontrolled, if it's unmanaged, it can cause you to, the mind produces thoughts, thoughts produce behaviors, behaviors produces actions, and actions produces results or consequences.
Yeah.
So how the usual thoughts that come in your mind have a very big influence on how you act and behave in your life. But if you are more present and aware of yourself and even your thoughts, you can take action. But, just to be clear, you don't need to control every thought that comes in your mind. You can't. But it's about not letting thoughts take over. And when you do it for the first time, they will continue to take over, but always with 0.5, 0.5% or 1% less intensity. The more you are present and aware. You are going to say something.
So basically you're saying that there is, in psychology we call this metacognition, as the ability to have a mind over your mind. So you're consciously and aware, thinking about your thoughts. You're thinking about your thinking process.
Yes. Let me touch something brief. I don't want to go deep into it because it would take a whole other podcast. But you are already a conscious human being. So you are aware of my voice right now.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something inside you which in scientific terms we call consciousness, which is already open and aware by itself, and it receives sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. I mentioned sight.
Yes.
And smell.
Yeah.
The eye, you see with your eyes, or you listen with your ears, or you smell with your nose. But who is receiving that information? The brain. But now we know it's not just the brain or the mind, it's consciousness itself. There is something inside you which is conscious, which makes you a conscious human being. And I'm saying this because you don't need to develop an amazing openness and awareness muscle and consciousness muscle, because it's already there. You just need to remove gradually the blanket which is covering consciousness, and this blanket is made out of thoughts, feelings, and emotions and perceptions which are not supporting you to be present and aware in your life. There are thoughts, feelings, and sensations and perceptions which are impeding you to see certain things which are not good for you. But you are already a conscious being, you are already aware. Deep down, when we were babies, and if we had a loving caregiver, a loving mother, blank slate, we were receiving information, we were not thinking, we were not worrying, so we're already aware. So it's about, to put it in simple terms, we already have muscles in the body. Now it's just about training them. Okay? Next time I speak with someone about this, I'll start with that.
Yeah.
So you have the muscle. The muscle is there. You don't need to build it from scratch. So you just need to practice it. And that is why it's important to nurture your presence and awareness in everyday life, because it will help you to manage your thoughts and feelings in a much more effective way, which will result in less mistakes and less suffering. And if there is less suffering, there is more happiness. People, some people, not people, even I, at times, we feel that happiness is something that you acquire. Oh, if I buy a car, I will be happy. Usually the feeling wears off after a week or two. But if you're truly present while enjoying your car, that is a feeling of happiness. And if you remove what is make you suffer, then the byproduct is more peace of mind and more happiness.
Why is it so hard to tackle these situations with a conscious mind?
Very good question. Because this is how I see it, based on meditation masters that I studied, spiritual teachers, and that. Because we are collectively, all of humanity, for thousands of years, operated in this way without knowing otherwise. Let me repeat it. So your question was, why is it so difficult consciously? Because we are not by default conscious in today's society. By default, we actually worry. I'm not saying that there is anything bad about worrying. When a worry comes up, it's giving you feedback to show you what you can do to avoid that negative situation, that negative consequence, that negative result. But if you keep worrying about it and you're not consciously seeing it, it's like worrying how much money you have in your wallet without checking. So what I'm saying is, we haven't been trained to be consciously aware that I can just open my wallet and check the money, to use that example.
Okay.
We have been influenced over thousands of years that we can just, we are keeping worrying and overthinking about how much money we have in our wallet, without knowing that I can consciously pull it out and look into it. To put it even into in different terms, it's like if you see a child and from birth you are telling them you are a failure, you don't know what you're doing, you can't succeed, all throughout their childhood, since they are a baby, what will happen? The mind has been trained in a way to feel as a failure, to feel that they won't succeed. So it's a collective consciousness, some people call it. The collective consciousness is that collectively we don't know about this. We don't know that I can be conscious of my emotion. So if you don't know that you can, will you? No.
So it's a sort of blind spot.
Yes, exactly. We are. It's a blind spot. In fact, I don't like to use this word, but in self-development terms, some spiritual books tell you when you meditate, you are more awake in your life. And if you are more awake in your life, it means that you were more asleep before.
So it's like two different extremes. If you go to the other extreme, you realize that you are on the other extreme.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we Why is it difficult? Because we are not trained from childhood to be conscious of our thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. We are operating on autopilot, as we said earlier.
And I'm remembering the saying that you just shared that the mind is an excellent servant because the mind is very good. It's an excellent tool for automation.
Yes,
So it will, by default, it will develop a pattern for that particular task, concept, or whatever to be automated
yeah,
because it's easier. It saves more energy.
yeah, yeah. In fact, if you could, I invite everyone who's listening as well and seeing to make this thought experiment. It's like you have two towns. In one town, from birth, so the parents already know this stuff, everyone is trained in meditation, mindfulness, being conscious of your thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. And when a challenge comes up, you accept that there's a challenge, you have the courage to change it, and you are wise enough to know when to do what. And then the other town, none of this is happening. What they are being taught is just to eat, go to school, make sure that you study, make sure that you get a good job, and see what you need to do to have some shelter, food, and drink. In the other town, this is also happening, but the conscious training is happening as well. If, and this is based on research, if you see the level of happiness and peace of mind that these two towns will have, the town that has been trained from a young age to be conscious and all the things that we said will be happier, less stressed, less anxious, less depressed. Why? Because you're training how to see things clearly, how to not let your mind take over, control, how to not let your mind become a terrible master.
Yeah. And it's a way, I think, it's also a way of the way we treat one another as well. I recently saw a short clip, I'm not sure where exactly, but I saw this clip and the person in this clip explained that when we see a baby trying to start walking, we try to celebrate and we are super happy when that baby does the first steps and we're exhilarated and clapping and whatever and sort of we are encouraging that human to continue to try and to continue to excel.
Yes.
But fast forward 20 or plus years when that person is an adult and that person shares their dream, in some cases that person might experience people, oh, you can't do it, it's impossible, it's difficult. That person might experience people shutting down their dreams. So what happened in between? Why we are supporting the baby to step up and make the first few steps, and then when that same human is trying to start working out, start opening up a business or pursuing their dreams, and we're shutting them down, what happened in between?
This is how I personally see it. You can never shut someone else's dream down unless you have already in some way shut yours or you're in denial of yours. Let me put it, let's see the other side of the coin. If I am a confident and secure man, I will not put other men down because I am confident and secure enough in my independence, in my manhood, whatever, that there is no need for me to put anyone else down. It's like I can never give you something that I don't already have. I can't give you a Ferrari if I don't have it already, or that I don't have the means to give you. So how can I communicate a feeling of disheartenedness. How can I make you disheartened with my words if I'm not already disheartened? Does that make sense?
It does.
For example, to continue this example, I may give you a smile, but are you sure of this? Are you sure of this career? But listen, if this is what you want, then go for it.
Yes, of course, making the person aware of the challenges, it's one thing.
So then, what changed from baby, to answer your question, from a baby to Dana, that a baby, since it's brand new, we don't usually judge a baby, okay? Although some people do anyway. And there's a potential. What happened? The people who judge others harshly for no reason and they try to stop other people's dreams is someone that has a terrible mind, a terrible master as their mind. The judgment has taken over. The immediate labeling has taken over. The immediate negative judgment has taken over. And since I can't give you something that I have, that means that I negatively judge myself most probably as well. Or I negatively judge my immediate family negatively. And that is a trait. I'm not saying that we have to condemn someone who judges this way, but that is a coping mechanism, a trait, which someone picks up in their life to survive or to be loved. You know? In fact, in these past 10 years of psychotherapy, what I learned is that all your behaviors which cause you harm or suffering at one point in your life, they were important and useful. You know? So, for example, if today, for example, I have a client, he procrastinates a lot. And he doesn't even know where to start doing his homework or doing a task or study or whatever. But through an exploration, he realized that he was avoiding doing certain things because when he was very young, his parents were constantly fighting. He was always in a very stressful family setting. And when he had these very difficult emotions and sadness and anxiety and whatever, and no one was helping him to understand them, what was his way to cope? To watch a movie or to play video games or work. In fact, when I meet parents and they tell me, he's all the time in the video games or work, I tell them, yes, but what other avenues does he have to cope? Does he have some kind of physical activity or sport? Oh, no, he doesn't want. Yes, but can you support him to nurture it? So, everything that happened in your life was, at that time, in Gestalt we call it a creative adjustment.
Okay.
You know, for example, nice people finish last. Have you ever wondered why I was like that in the past? Why am I always trying to be liked? Why am I always nice? Even when I'm a bit disappointed or angry inside. Why am I a people pleaser? Because when you were younger, the situation that you were in, it asked of you, be nice so you will be loved. Be rough and a bit dana because that's how you will receive love. You know, some people and parents, oh, you're too soft, don't cry. So I will not cry because otherwise I will not be loved and accepted. And then, especially men, grow up never talking about their emotions, never crying. So each coping mechanism at one point, it served a good purpose or a survival purpose. But nowadays, an adult can see that that is no longer perhaps the right way. You don't need to change it completely, just fine tune it a bit. I can still be nice, but I can be nice or I can be polite because it's good to be polite.
Yes.
But then if I don't agree with you, I'll tell you, no, I don't agree. I'm sorry. No. Just to be liked or to please you.
So it's important to be aware from where that stems from.
Yes, the intention.
The intention behind that.
And to use our words, how can you be more aware of that? By meditation, mindfulness, psychotherapy, or being more aware in your life. So when that comes up in you, you see it before you do it. But, disclaimer, all the things that I said, all the growth ways or whatever, and awareness and emotions, in their own time. When you sow a seed today, you don't get the fruit tomorrow. But when you sow a seed today, it immediately starts to grow in a few days. But then you have to keep watering it. The good thing about humanity is that even if you don't work on something every single day at first, you can still continue to grow and learn. It doesn't mean that the plant will die. You know? In fact, and if I may say so, for example, some people feel that there is so much suffering that it's better if they die. I don't want to live anymore, or I don't want to live with myself anymore. The mind has taken over completely. And I'm not going to go into the argument, is suicide right or not, because frankly, I can only speak from my experience, and I don't know enough about it. I didn't do enough research about it. But there's a guidance which says suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. A permanent solution to a temporary problem. Because most people who are suicidal, if they seek support, not years later, even days later or weeks later, they are so happy that they didn't try to kill themselves or they didn't go all the way or whatever. And why I'm mentioning that? Because only death stops our growth. We will never stop growing until the last few seconds of our life. So give yourself time, give yourself space. If you're in a difficult moment, it's good to try yourself, but if it's becoming too much, if it's affecting very negatively your work, your relationships, your health, your well-being, maybe it's time to seek adequate support. And seeking adequate support is a sign of strength, because you have to be strong to say, hey man, you know what, I can't do this on my own, I need someone else.
And in that position, earlier you mentioned about some misconceptions about therapy. And one of the misconceptions that I often hear is that people seek therapy so that the therapist can give them an answer. Sort of like, it's like the therapist has a magic wand, and just like magic, they will solve their problem. From your experience so far, how would you suggest that a person seeking therapy prepares themselves in order to receive and accept therapy?
I think it's that openness in both ways. Openness to try to be as open and as honest as you can with the therapist, because otherwise he or she will not be able to give you therapy to who you really are, but therapy to a particular mask that you are putting on. So that openness and an open mind to consider some other ways to see yourself from a different perspective, just new things or different things.